Hi, this is Tracy from Rockstarot Tarot, and this video is about, actually got inspired by talks that I've been having with Nina lately, and we've both expressed how we've suddenly been drawn to working with the very first decks that we actually bought over like 30 years ago. And I found myself being the same way as well. So I thought I would share some of my very first decks, except there's a couple in there. Well, it's probably only one actually. But there'll be a reason why I'm including this. So just excuse me wearing this this top. I feel like a real tarot reader today, hey. But it's still very uncomfortable for me to wear a bra, so I just rather just not wear one. So I'm just covering up to keep everybody from not being shocked. So to start it off, when it all first started is actually, and those of you who know me will know how I read with Titania's fortune cards. So this is actually, this is the second edition. I have actually got the first edition that a beautiful subscriber sent to me, Michelle Cracker. And I keep that just for using it for special, because it is a very fragile deck. This is hence why I actually, what's it called on it? Put clear contact on it. So I started reading this deck back in when it was first published. It was in the year 2000. So it actually made me put my tarot deck aside and concentrate on this one, because I actually got better answers out of this. Like it seemed, well, it was quite funny because in the first edition, I'll have to check if the second book says the same thing. Titania said not to ask a question of this deck, that will pick up on what you need to know, which I found to be true. And it wasn't until years and years and years and years later, I'm talking about like maybe only 4 years ago or something, that yes, you can actually ask questions of your Lenormand deck, and I do it all the time now. But I still find that if I don't ask a question and just draw the cards, it gives me the best answers. So I still tend to do that. I do ask questions of it, but I used to actually just keep my tarot deck, which was a Rider-Waite deck, which I no longer have because I actually gave that one away. And I used that one for answering questions. So when I first got the second edition, I can't remember when did that one come out? I've got the little book here, because this is probably when it all started. When does this one? Does it say when it actually got this? Writing is a lot different on here. So this was published in 2018. So this is actually when it all started. Is going back to decks that I've used before, and of course all of you know how much I love the Lenormand. So I'll just a little bit more forward, so that that's pretty much what they look like. And it's kind of psychedelic, isn't it? The colouring in the first edition is a lot better, but just for day-to-day use, I'll use this one purely because I don't want to wreck my first edition one. So these are more kind of washed out. So this, and when I saw, because my first edition Lenormand deck I actually threw out because it actually went off. It got really ratty and tatty, had a terrible smell to it, and it started giving me really negative readings, And I've actually got this deck on a tarot app called, it's a window-based one, Houswives Tarot, and even when I used it on there, it gave me terrible readings, so I just gave it away. Then I saw this come out again in 2018. I thought, I don't know, should I or not, or whatever. I thought, bugger it, I'm going to buy it. And I'm glad I did, because now it just works like a charm. So mainly, I just needed a break from it, and that's why it started giving me negative readings. I don't really know why. But anyway, this is what started my trip down memory lane and starting to use decks that I've first bought, many, many years ago. So that was the first one. And then I discovered, I was really drawn. Now this is my Hansen Roberts. Now this is over, so I've been reading over 30 years. I don't know the exact how long I've been reading. I know it's been over 30 years. So I've actually edged mine and trimmed it because it got really, really grotty. So the Hansen Roberts, this is what I brought to actually replace my the Rider-Waite one that I gave away, I think. Oh no, actually I didn't buy it to replace it. I just liked this one better because I was in 2004 I joined the Eclectic Tarot forum, and that just sort of came up because I was looking for images of a deck that I wanted to buy, and I came upon this site and I became a member there, and that just started a whole new ball game in my tarot reading, that, you know, that you don't have to have people in front of you to do a reading, and doing, you know, doing email readings and all that sort of thing. And I've been actually drawn again to working with this deck as well. I've always loved this deck. It's always, I had a really strong bond with this deck, and then unfortunately, like all of us tarot readers, you know, you see other decks and you just keep on buying them, and you keep putting, you know, you just keep, you put ones that you've had forever aside, and you kind of lose touch with it, and you sort of lose the connection. So I've been very drawn to back to working with this one again. I find that I pull this one out a lot, particularly since I've been sick, because I don't think my reading skills are back on par to what they used to be, purely because I just haven't felt like reading, to be honest. But I have felt like reading. I have felt like reading lately, hence why I've been doing a couple of videos, but we'll see how that goes after I start my chemo back on the 13th. So that's another deck that I had a really strong bond with, and I read with a lot on the Eclectic Tarot forum. And then another one is, and this has been trimmed and edged as well, and this is Tarot of the Moon Garden. My husband brought me this. How long have we lived? How long have we been married? 17. So I think 16 years. No, it would have been 17 years ago when we actually moved to here to Western Australia. He brought me this on the road trip, and I really fell in love with this deck, and I still like it. It's still whimsical. It's still, I suppose when you think about it, it's very much like the Hansen Roberts, isn't it? It's got that same sort of look about it, but I'd say this is more in the fairy tale type of realm, type of things. But it does give good readings. It really does. It still hits the nail on the spot. So this is another deck that I've had for a long time that I've been drawn to working with again. It's really funny. It's just, I don't know what it is. Like sometimes it makes me feel like selling, you know, most of the decks that I've got, and just keeping the ones that I first bought all those years ago. Except I have still got some favourites of the new ones that I can't get go of. So that's another deck that I've been drawn to work with. This one too has been trimmed and edged. You can see I like purple, but I just seem to go with it. And this is the Pagan Cats Tarot. This is a gorgeous deck. I love this deck. I really do. When my cat died, gosh, it's now 6 years ago, I actually did a spread that somebody put on Instagram. For the life of me, I can't remember what it was called now or where it was, because I actually did delete my Instagram account, all of it, and then I started again. And that's what I had. I had a black cat like that. And it was only a short 3-card spread, and I used this particular deck, and it just was absolutely beautiful for connecting with my cat. I couldn't believe, actually it's making me tear up thinking about it, because it was such a strong message. And I don't know if the card will turn up, but basically when I asked how did I make her feel, and it was like a queen, but I can't remember which queen or which card it was that showed up in this. And I really love this deck, and I've been enjoying using this again, because I have pretty much put tarot reading aside while I've been ill, because I just haven't felt like it, and plus I didn't really want to see what was in the cards, if you know what I mean. Another deck that I've had, this sat on my shelf for 16 years. I brought it, I flipped through it, and I didn't like it. I was really disappointed with it. And then I decided to do a Instagram challenge on getting in touch with your spirit guides. And the day before I actually did this challenge, I put this deck back up on my shelf. I've got a bookshelf behind where all my decks are. I took it out of storage and put it back up on my shelf, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and I'm going to use this deck. And my God, it absolutely screamed to me. So, and funny enough, this is what started me on the track spirit messages all those years ago, because this is the Celtic Dragon Tarot. And this deck now absolutely just speaks to me like you wouldn't believe now. So this is, so you know, sometimes we sell our decks really quickly. We don't think we resonate them, or sometimes you might need to actually hold on to them, though I don't recommend like I did like 16 years before I before it suddenly started to talk to me, but I probably wasn't ready for the messages that it had to give me. So this deck is, it comes with a really nice thick book, but as everything I read intuitively. So yeah, this is another deck, and believe it or not, this cardstock, this deck is actually Llewellyn. That's what the backs look like, cardstock. I don't think I showed the backs of the other ones. That's the Pagan Tarot, Cat's Tarot, and this is the Moon Garden, and that was the Hansen Roberts. So this cardstock is absolutely superb. Look at it. It's like brand new still. It's just absolutely beautiful. And that just goes to prove how good Llewellyn stock used to be. It's absolutely crap now. So the Dragon Tarot, yeah, this is another one that that I've been sort of called to working back with as well. Another one. Now these are two decks together, and my husband brought me the Druid Animal Oracle, which is that back there. And this is the Druid Plant Oracle, which is a green, isn't it? Oh, you can kind of see it like that. So, but the Druid one, he brought me that on our honeymoon when we're going over to New Zealand. There was a shop, and I've actually trimmed these cards. It's the best way to show it, probably that way, because these are a lot bigger. So as you can see, these are absolutely gorgeous, and they look so much better without the white. It had white borders around it, and I didn't realise until I started to trim it. Oh, this is just getting awkward for me. I'm just going to pick some up like that. Before I started to trim it, I didn't realise that they were all off centre, all of the cards, and these were expensive. That was about $80. The animal ones, so these are obviously these are the plant ones, but these were yeah, and that's a lot of money back then. You can get it quite cheap. So this is another one that's been calling to me as well to start working with it. Actually, and I've noticed Lisa from Keratin's Cauldron has been using or she had been in her Instagram, and it's another thing that made me want to work with them again, because I've forgotten how much I love them. The artwork in these decks is absolutely incredible, and I did want to be a druid. I did try to study to be a druid, but unfortunately it was too expensive back when I wanted to do it. It was well over 20 years ago now that I wanted to do it, and back then I didn't have the money to do it. But this is just absolutely gorgeous deck. So that's another deck that I've been wanting to call to working with again. And I sort of edged mine in the really bright greens. I wanted them all to sort of all together. I think that's just a highlighter. Highlighters are quite good for edging. So, and then what else have I got here? And of course I can't forget my beautiful Bohemian Gothic. This is the first edition. Actually, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to hold them up like that. It's a lot easier for me. This is in 2007, and I pulled this out. Actually, I have got a week ahead reading that's coming up, but I've actually used this deck in. I've been drawn to working with this one again. This is another cardstock that's absolutely beautiful, and I mean I've used this one a lot, and it's held up really well, and it did nick on the edges, so I just edged it in black, and it's just like brand new again. So the quality, I mean, that's an expensive, we all know that Barber Studios is very expensive. I don't know about now what the quality is like, but this has certainly stood up to the test of time. So this is another a deck here that I've been called to working with again. I absolutely love it. It really appealed to me when I first saw it. I've actually brought a matching bag as well, and this is very special because this is the very first deck that I brought with my the very first money that I earned as a tarot reader. I brought this deck, and I brought a matching bag that's got, that's actually got this on here. It's the Strength card and Dracula's Castle, but I don't think that the Castle one isn't actually in this deck. I don't think. I think that was just a special one that you could order as a bag. I'll see if I can find the Strength, just the Strength card, because I've actually been having, because that's it. So you unzip it, so it's a tote bag and you can unzip it, and that's the one that I've got on the bag, and I've been having that one, using that one now because of what I'm going through, you know, just to give me a little bit of strength. So this is another deck that's, you know, it's very special to me and that I've been drawn to working with again. Another one that I've been drawn to working with, it's just kind of etched in silver. I really wanted a red, but I couldn't do it, is the Housewives Tarot. This you know, this cardstock is pretty crappy, but I love this deck. It's sassy. It's a smart ass deck. It's I don't know. It's just really a good deck, and I've been drawn to working with this one again as well. So it's really funny that after all these years, you know, both Nina and I felt ourselves drawn to working with decks that we've had for a long time. You know, it's really funny. So I don't know, I love the Housewives decks. I do, because I love the 50s too. You know, if I could afford it, I would wear like 50s clothes. I love the rockabilly look. I think it's awesome. Maybe I should try that now. I have to buy new clothes. You know, having one boob there's some challenges with clothes, I tell you. So that's another deck that I've been drawn to working with again. So I'm enjoying using that deck as well. And this is probably the only oracle one, because I had this for a long time as well, and I loved it. But it's a Churro Machete deck, and with a lot of Churro Machete decks, this is in 2014, so I've had it for a long time, and it was the same time that I was doing the spirit message. And of course, this is the, you know, the oracle of visions that I use when I do my spirit messages. And this, once I'd done that spiritual challenge, and that's when I thought I'm going to try it with this particular deck. And this is the only, this is just a perfect deck for doing spirit messages. Don't ask me why, but I think because Churro Machete is not a tarot reader himself, he's purely an artist. His decks can come across as cold, and some people struggle to read with them. And this is what I'm thinking anyway. I don't know if anyone else feels like that. But this deck is absolutely awesome for doing spirit messages. And I really miss doing spirit messages, but I didn't feel the calling to it. Of course, that's got a special meaning to me, that card, as Evie from Fairy Wren Whispers would know. It just, yeah, I know now why, because I was sick, and they're giving me a rest. I still need a rest, you know. I've still got a bit more to go through before I'm well. So that's another deck that it's not really that I've been sort of drawn to working with it, but it was an old deck that sat, you know, much like the Dragon Tarot that sat behind. And this deck is an honourable mention because I had a very much love-hate relationship with this deck, and I'd never liked it. I thought it was hideous, and a lot of people feel this way about this particular deck. But when I was in the Eclectic Tarot Forum, what we used to do is we used to practice reading on each other. So somebody would put a spread of the, you know, whatever group you were in, spread of the week, and then we'd be partnered up with partners, and we'd read for each other, and they would be able to choose what deck that they wanted to use. And it's the Deviant Moon Tarot. So I've entered mine in a burgundy, and I hated it. I thought it was, you know, really ugly. I absolutely love this deck now. But what got me into liking this deck is because of the very reason I had to do so many readings for other people, and this was their deck of choice. And I thought, you know what, this deck reads really well. I can really, you know, really connect to it. It actually gave a terrific readings, and so I ended up buying it. I can't remember how long I've had this one for. I'm not too sure, because this is the Borderless Edition. So all I've done is just edged it. So this gets an honourable mention, because, you know, sometimes I always find it's funny when people say, oh, I didn't buy this deck because I didn't like the death card, or I didn't like such and such a card, you know. And I always kind of find that weird, because sometimes, you know, if you're doing a reading for a client and that card comes up, and the very thing that you find offensive in it, or it just rubs you up the wrong way, has a very special meaning for the client, and as soon as they see it, they resonate with it. Oh my God, you know what that reminds me of? So that's why you should never ever get put off buying a deck if it's got a few ugly cards in it, because really it's for one thing, it challenges you as a reader, but more importantly, it can really resonate with the person who's actually having the reading themselves. So I had to put that deck in there as an honourable mention with the Deviant Moon, because I really tried not to use that deck and read with it. And in the end, I just couldn't believe how well that deck actually reads. So there's some of my very first few decks that I've got, except of course the one that I've just mentioned. I've had that one for a while. For not as long as the others anyway, for the old 20-30 odd years that I've had. So what about you? Have you been drawn to working with decks that you first brought many years ago, or are you still working with the deck that you perhaps brought 20 odd years ago or whatever? So I thought this was really kind of interesting, and I did say to Nina, the reason why I think a lot of us, well, at least Nina and I have been going back to decks that we first used all those years ago, is because a lot of the decks that are coming out, because I mean, when I first started reading the tarot, really the Hansen Roberts was the only different type of Rider-Waite deck that you actually had. So there wasn't there just wasn't. No, I'm just going to turn off the mic. That's it. Turn off the phone. So there wasn't many, for choose from. So it would have been the Hansen Rob, would have been the Marseille. So when I first started to read the tarot, I didn't even know there were different systems of reading the tarot. I didn't know that there was a top. There was, that would be another one that would have been around, I suppose. The Rider-Waite, the Marseille. I didn't know there were different reading systems back when I first started 30 odd years ago. So there was only and as for books, I think the only book that I had was Nancy Guerin's Reading Tarot for Yourself, and I used to religiously follow that. So basically what she did is she picked say it was, I don't know, what's this card here, what do we got? So this is the Seven of Swords. Say that is the Seven of Swords, isn't it? No, that's not. It's an Eight of Swords. Eight of Swords, and she would say, what if you drew that card in the matter of love, work, career, another person, and etc. So it was about 3 different pages full of what one card would mean, and I used to religiously follow it. And then the old intuition kicks in, and think, you know what, that doesn't mean that for me. And I ended up actually threw out that book because it just felt a bit, so I used it that much. So I didn't even know back then that there was a reading system, because there was no YouTube, there was no nothing. You just found out by yourself. And in one way, I think that's good that you didn't know there was a particular system of reading particular types of cards, because for me personally, it's opened myself up to become a better reader, because I'm not, if I see the Seven of Swords, I don't automatically think that it's backstabbing or anything like that. And for me, actually, the Seven of Swords, when it comes up, is that you've got to change your strategy. Of course, sometimes it can come up that, mean that very thing, that it's backstabbing. So while I don't read traditionally, I'm more of a pictorial reader, I still feel it's good to have some type of system memorized. So for me, it'll be the Rider-Waite, and I'm sure many other people are like that as well, because it's something you can fall back on when a particular card doesn't make sense when you've done a reading. And I don't know about you, but I used to I used to write it all out, but I've got horrible writing, so I've never journaled. I never got into that. And the thing is with me, when you're a pictorial reader and if I re-looked at the reading, I'd keep seeing more and more different things. So I just stopped that straight away. But if I really am sort of stumped and I don't really pull out massive spreads, I only pull out probably 3 or 4 cards, you can take a photo of it and you can go back and look on it, and then you can. So if you're falling back on just what the memorized ones that you've got that particular card, and then, a couple of days later you look at it again, and then, something, light bulb goes off and you go, I know what that means now, because you've had a few days in hindsight to think about it. That is not what I'm like now, but when I first started, I used to, I had to write it out, because I wouldn't have had phones or anything then like that. But, nowadays it's kind of good, because you could, if you wanted to, can take a photo about it, and photo of the spread, and then ponder on it and things like that. So I think it's kind of good that I never ever, even knew there was different systems of reading. I just read what I saw in the cards, and I've always been like that. And I think it's good. But in saying that, I still think it's good if you have got some type of a system memorized. And there was only one book that did say the reason why Right Away it was good is because most people who wrote books on tarot cards would use that particular deck. So, you know, you kind of get a bigger sort of an understanding on it. But anyway, that's what's been happening with me. I've very much been drawn to working with my older decks, and actually I got off track, didn't I? And the reason why I said to Nina is why people, because now when people, all the tarot decks that are available, and nowadays, I mean, it's, you know, every week there's a new deck coming out. There's all these Kickstarters and all that sort of thing. But how I put it, and I'll read out what I said to Nina, because I think it's where was it now? I said here, I said perhaps because older decks were created by people back then that actually read cards themselves, because you've got to think a lot of creators, Churro Machete is one of them, but there are a lot of creators out there who make tarot decks who are not tarot readers, okay? They purely like it for the art, but here I've got down, they were actually, the decks were created by people back then that actually read cards themselves and were not in it for a quick buck. So then I went on to say, I don't know, most decks nowadays remind me of fake jewelry that you used to get in machines. They're all glittery and gold, and then you find out it lacks substance and breaks. And that's, I think, is what's happening with a lot of tarot decks that are out there now, that they're just not cut out what they're meant to be. There's not thought put in them. We all know about decks that are using, you know, they'll say it's a voodoo deck, and then people who actually do practice voodoo saying, no, that's not how it's represented. That's how not the, you know, the god or the loa or looks like or is represented. So they don't even do any research into the decks that they're making. And I think this is why, well, at least for myself, is that I'm getting drawn back to my older decks, because they just had meaning to them. I mean, besides the Churro, we all know that Churro Machete is an artist, and he's always said that. He's always said that's what he is. He's an artist first, and I respect that, because he says what it is. But some others don't. They just, you know, I'm not saying all creators are like that, but a lot of the newer tarot creators are. They're just in there. You know, there's all sorts of things that are happening, and I think that's why, you know, you kind of go back to decks that, you know, before all that sort of stuff happened, you know, they just did decks because they read them themselves, they loved them, and they wanted to share how they felt the tarot or oracle was represented to themselves. So, because I mean, this is even Titania's fortune cards. She said that it was a modern take on the, you know, on the Lenormand cards, which it is, because it's very kind of 60-ish, isn't it? Very psychedelic sort of thing. And I appreciate that when they come out and say it. So I think this is why, personally, I've been drawn back to, because I've just found that, you know, I bought a tarot deck, and I'm really excited, and I get it, and it's just crap. And you know, remember that I read what I see through the images in the tarot. I don't always have a standard meaning I hardly ever do when I look at the cards. So if for me to get a deck and it doesn't appeals to me visually, is very, very disappointing, and I'm sure everybody else is in the same boat, very, very disappointed as well. So yeah, so that's my take on it. I just think it's just, yeah, it all looks glittery and gold on the shelf, and you bring it home and then it's just like, oh, you know, really? So yeah, so anyway, that's it. I shall shut this off, because it's already been going for nearly 30 minutes, and I shall see you all in the next video.